and I spotted my daughter at South Station in Boston, clutching my grandson Ethan so tight I knew something was terribly wrong. Her puffer coat hung like a ghost on her frame. Cheap shoes, trembling hands, no Mazda. "Why aren't you using the car I gave you?" I asked. What she told me next made my blood boil. Her husband and his mother had stolen it. They'd stolen her entire paycheck, all of it. Left her with $85 a week. Threatened to take Ethan away. That's when I realized they'd made a fatal mistake. They'd targeted the wrong family. Before this story changes everything I need to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments below. I want to know who's listening to my story. I hadn't seen my daughter in 2 months. The excuse of work and exhaustion had worn thin by late September, and honestly, I'd stopped pushing. That Tuesday afternoon, I found myself waiting at South Station in downtown Boston, watching the commuter crowd shuffle past. The old brick building echoed with the familiar sounds of arriving and departing trains, the metallic screech of wheels on tracks, the murmur of hundreds of travelers moving through their lives. I checked my watch. 3:15. Juliet's train was due any minute. I spotted her before she saw me. She emerged from the platform entrance and something twisted in my chest. This wasn't the Juliet I knew. The woman walking toward me was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Her puffer jacket hung loose on her frame, the expensive black fabric now stained and frayed at the edges. She wore cheap shoes, the kind sold online for $30, their soles worn thin. But it was her face that hit me hardest. Gaunt. The cheekbones, too, pronounced the eyes haunted by something I couldn't quite name. And her hands. They were trembling as she held Ethan's hand, our 5-year-old grandson clinging to her leg, like he was afraid she might disappear. "Dad," Juliet said when she finally noticed me. Her voice was small, almost fragile. We hugged, but there was no warmth in it, no relief at seeing her father. Just a mechanical embrace between two people going through the motions. I pulled back, holding her at arm's length. "Where's your car?" The question came out sharper than I intended. I'd bought her that Mazda a year ago for her birthday. A 2019 Mazda 3 Reliable Practical. The kind of car a young mother should drive. "I sold it," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "You went—" I felt the first real spike of something anger, yes, but also recognition. In 20 years of intelligence work, I'd learned to read people. It was a skill honed through thousands of interactions, through watching micro-expressions and body language, through understanding the 1,000 tiny ways humans betray their emotions. And everything I was seeing right now told me one thing: my daughter was in danger. We needed the money. Juliet continued, still not looking at me. Ethan's grip on her leg tightened, and the boy's eyes, wide with something that looked like fear, finally found mine. I could read people. It was a skill that had kept me alive for 2 decades, that had made me valuable in rooms where lives hung in the balance. It had taught me to see patterns, to identify threats, to understand when someone was afraid. And right now, looking at my daughter standing in the middle of South Station with holes in her shoes and trembling hands, I knew my daughter was living in fear. Something had happened. Something terrible. And whatever it wasn't over. We found a quiet corner table at a local deli in downtown Boston. The lunch rush had faded, leaving the place nearly empty, except for an elderly couple in the back and a businessman reading the Globe. I ordered hot chocolate for Ethan, who'd finally stopped clinging to his mother. The boy sat quietly sipping from a too-hot mug, his eyes darting nervously between us. "Dad!" Juliet started, her voice barely above a whisper. She wrapped her hands around a cold coffee cup, fingers white at the knuckles. "There's something I need to tell you. I don't know how to... I've wanted to tell you for a while now." I waited. 20 years in intelligence work had taught me patience. People talk when you give them space. They fill the silence with truth. "It started about 6 months ago." She continued, her eyes fixed on the coffee cup. "Weston's mother, Haven, she started visiting more. At first it was sweet. She wanted to spend time with Ethan, help out with dinner, that kind of thing. But then it changed. Changed how?" I asked, keeping my voice level, though something cold had begun settling in my stomach. "She started saying things like, 'You know, honey, Ethan should have security. Real security. That condo from Mom is a good start, but you should really put his name on it.' Little comments at first, nothing aggressive. Ethan turned to look at his mother, sensing the tension. She touched his hair gently, but her hand was trembling. I told her no," Juliet said. "I told her it was my grandmother's home, that I wanted to keep it in the family that way. as my inheritance, my responsibility. I explained it to her several times. Each time she just smiled and said, "Well, we'll see." "We'll see," I repeated, noting the words. Haven wasn't taking no for an answer. "But Dad," Juliet's voice cracked slightly. It didn't stop there. When I kept refusing, she got different, colder. She started calling Weston at work, filling his head with ideas. She'd tell him I was being selfish, that I didn't care about Ethan's future, that a good mother would want to secure her son's inheritance. I could see Juliet's shoulders tightening as she talked, her chin trembling slightly. Weston came home one night and told me that his mother said if I really loved Ethan, I'd transfer the deed. He said she was just being practical, that she was right, that modern mothers need to think about these things. Juliet's hands were shaking now. I'd told him no. I'd explained why. But when his mother said it, suddenly he agreed with her. "Your husband sided with his mother," I said quietly. "Over and over," Juliet whispered. And then Haven started getting impatient. That's when the tone shifted. That's when she stopped asking and started demanding. I felt something shift inside me. Demanding, not asking, not suggesting. Demanding. She came to the house. Juliet continued, her eyes finally meeting mine. She sat in my living room drinking my tea and told me that if I didn't sign the property over to Ethan, which really meant to her through Weston, there would be consequences. She said it so calmly, Dad, so matter-of-factly, like she was reading the weather report. My hands clenched on the table and I forced them to relax. And then, Juliet said, leaning forward slightly, her voice barely audible, things escalated. She started threatening me in ways I didn't understand at first, ways that made me terrified. The quiet intensity of her final words hung in the air between us. I saw it then, not just fear in my daughter's eyes, but something worse, resignation, like she'd already accepted that her situation was hopeless. I had no idea what those threats were. Not yet. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty: whatever Haven had done, whatever she'd threatened Juliet with, it was about to become my problem. And I was going to solve it. Juliet's voice dropped to barely a whisper as she continued. Her hands trembled around the untouched hot chocolate, and I noticed she was picking at a paper napkin, shredding it into smaller and smaller pieces. Haven showed me a video, she said, each word seeming to cost her effort. She called me, said she wanted to talk about something important. When I went to the house, she played it on her laptop. A video of what? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer wasn't going to be simple. Of me. Supposedly. She said it was me screaming at Ethan, shaking him, calling him names. Dad, it looked real. It looked like I was hurting my son. Juliet's voice cracked. But I never did that. I know I didn't. But when I watched it, even I almost believed it. I felt my jaw clench. She told me she had someone edit clips from different moments, times when I was disciplining him, times when I was frustrated, moments where my voice was raised. But they were taken out of context, spliced together to make it look like... Juliet couldn't finish. She just shook her head. Like abuse? I said quietly. Yes, Juliet whispered. She said if I didn't sign the condo over, she'd send it to CPS. She said they'd take Ethan away from me. She said I'd be convicted of child abuse and never see my son again. The couple in the back of the deli looked up briefly, sensing something in my involuntary, sharp intake of breath. I forced myself to stay still, to listen. But that's not all, Juliet continued, her voice getting smaller. She also had forged documents, financial records from my company. She said she had a contact who helped her get copies of my work files, and she'd altered them to make it look like I'd been stealing company money. Stealing, I repeated. My hands were starting to clench beneath the table. Thousands of dollars. The signatures were fake, the numbers were changed, but they looked real enough. She said if I didn't comply, she'd send those documents to my boss and the police. She'd say I was embezzling. She told me I'd go to prison and lose custody of Ethan either way, either through CPS or through criminal charges. I understood then. Haven hadn't made random threats. She'd constructed a trap with multiple pressure points, each one designed to destroy a different aspect of my daughter's life. The threat of losing her son, the threat of imprisonment, the threat of being labeled a criminal. It was sophisticated, it was cruel, and it was working. Weston started enforcing her rules. Juliet said, her eyes finally meeting mine. They were red-rimmed now. He'd take my bank card on payday, withdraw my entire paycheck, and hand it over to his mother. I get $85 a week for everything, food, gas, Ethan's daycare, everything. When I questioned him about it, he said his mother was right. He said I was being selfish, that families had to stick together, that his mother was just protecting the family's interests. Your husband, I said, my voice tight, is complicit in this. He doesn't see it that way, Juliet said quietly. He thinks his mother is protecting us. He genuinely believes I should just sign the condo over, and then everything would be fine. The weight of what she was describing settled over me like a physical thing. 2 months. For 2 months, my daughter had been living under systematic pressure, financial control, threats to her child, threats to her freedom, threats to her career. 2 months of compliance. 2 months of fear. I set my coffee cup down very carefully. My hands wanted to shake with the force of what I was feeling. The truth she revealed ignited a rage I hadn't felt in years, Juliet said, looking at me intently. Dad, I didn't know what to do. I still don't. I just kept thinking about Ethan, about what would happen if CPS really did take him. If they believed that video, if... Juliet, I said, cutting her off gently, you did the right thing telling me. But my mind was already working, already processing, already calculating. Haven Jenkins had made a critical error. She'd targeted the wrong family. She'd threatened the wrong people. And in about 20 minutes, she was going to discover what it meant to have someone with my particular set of skills and my particular motivation decide that enough was enough. I sat in silence for a long moment, processing everything, processing 2 months of systematic abuse, processing the sophistication of Haven's threats, processing the fact that my own son-in-law had become her instrument. Then I looked at my daughter and knew exactly what I had to do. I reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin was cold. Juliet, listen to me, I said quietly, aware that my voice had changed, hardened. What Haven Jenkins has done isn't a family dispute. This is organized crime, extortion, blackmail, document forgery, multiple felonies, and I know how to handle this. She stared at me, uncertainty flickering across her face. I need to tell you something about myself, I continued. Something I haven't talked about in a very long time. I spent 20 years in Army intelligence, special operations, not desk work, real operational work, surveillance threat analysis, recruitment, neutralization of threats. Juliet's grip on my hand tightened slightly. I know how to gather information people want to keep hidden. I know how to identify vulnerabilities. I know how to build a case that holds up. I paused, letting that sink in. More importantly, I know how this ends. Dad, what are you saying? Juliet asked, her voice small. I'm saying Haven made a mistake. She targeted the wrong family. She threatened the wrong people. This just became personal. My jaw was tight. And now we're going to end this. I laid out the plan simply. 4 phases. Phase 1, we gather evidence. Every threat she's made, every forged document, every recorded conversation, we collect it all. I have people who can help with that. People, Juliet repeated weakly. Former colleagues, people I trust. We'll have audio recordings of her threats analysis of those fake documents, documentation of the financial control. I squeezed her hand. Phase 2. We bring Weston into this, not through force, through truth. We show him what his mother has done, and we give him a choice. He'll never, Juliet started. He will when he realizes his mother has been manipulating him, when he understands what he's actually complicit in. That's human nature. People resist until they see the truth clearly. Then they choose. Juliet looked uncertain but didn't interrupt. Phase 3, we set a trap using marked money. Haven's so confident in her control over Weston, she'll take what he hands her without question. We document every transaction. And Phase 4, we bring her to meet with a lawyer to finalize the condo transfer. CPS gets notified. Police arrive with a warrant. We catch her with the evidence in hand, the threats on record, everything. Juliet's eyes had widened. You've really thought this through. I've had about 5 minutes to think this through, I said, but I've had 20 years training for this exact type of operation. I leaned forward slightly. But Juliet listened to me carefully. For this to work, you have to act normal. Completely normal. You have to keep handing over money. You have to keep enduring her presence. You have to let her believe you're broken and compliant. Can you do that? She nodded slowly. I know it's asking a lot. But if she suspects anything has changed, she'll destroy the evidence and disappear. We need her to feel completely in control right up until the moment she isn't. How long? Juliet whispered. A few weeks, maybe a month, then this ends. For the first time since I'd seen her at South Station, I watched my daughter's shoulders relax slightly. Not because the situation had changed, but because she wasn't alone anymore. 3 days after meeting Juliet at South Station, I made the first call. Solomon answered on the second ring. "It's been a while," I said. "Yeah," he replied. "I was wondering when you'd need me again." Solomon Harris had been my tech specialist for 15 years. If there was a device that needed to be placed, recorded, or analyzed, Solomon was the man. I explained the situation in clinical terms. No emotion, just facts. By the time I hung up, we had a plan. 2 days later, Solomon placed a microtransmitter in Haven's house in Somerville. He'd spent 2 days surveilling her schedule, timing it perfectly. The device was smaller than a grain of rice, the receiver hidden in the adjacent apartment. Within 48 hours, we had audio streaming into encrypted files on my secure server. Andre took point on surveillance. While Solomon worked the electronics, Andre followed Russell Crawford. He documented every meeting, every phone call, every interaction. He was building a map of the operation. And then the recordings started coming in. Haven's voice crystal clear through the transmitter, discussing her plans with casual brutality. "That fool Juliet will sign eventually. If she doesn't, Russell's guys can pay her another visit, or we lean harder on the kids' daycare angle." Then on day 9, "Weston's such a doormat. I tell him jump, he asks how high. He's useless anyway. Once I get that property sold, I'll cut him loose with enough to keep him quiet." She was planning to discard her own son like garbage. Owen Peterson, now working for a private forensics firm, took the video and documents. Within 3 days, he confirmed what I'd suspected. The video was a montage clips from different moments, spliced together, context removed. The financial documents were altered using basic image editing software. The forgeries were sloppy if you knew what to look for. An expert would demolish them in court. We had everything we needed, except one thing. I arranged a meeting with Weston at a coffee shop in Cambridge. He arrived looking confused, tired, the look of a man who'd been trapped under his mother's thumb his entire life. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I played the first recording, his mother's voice cold and calculating, discussing how to pressure Juliet further. Then the second recording, Haven's assessment of Weston himself. I watched his face as he heard his mother say she considered him useless, as he heard her plan to abandon him once the property was sold. The color drained from his face. His hands started shaking. "She's been manipulating you," I said quietly. "Using you. She doesn't care about you or Juliet or Ethan. She cares about money. That's it." Weston couldn't finish a sentence. "I need your help," I continued. "I need your testimony about everything she's done, and I need you to keep acting normal. Can you do that?" For a long moment, he just stared at the phone on the table. Then he nodded. "Yes," he said finally, "I'll help you." Over those 2 weeks, something shifted inside me. I'd spent years convincing myself I was retired, that this part of my life was over. But with each call, each piece of evidence, each small victory in the operation, I felt something I'd thought was gone purpose. The knowledge that I was still good at what I did, that I was still capable of protecting what mattered. By day 14, every piece was in place. The recordings, the forensic analysis, Weston's cooperation, Russell's surveillance data. It was all locked down, documented, ready to go. Haven Jenkins didn't know it yet, but she was already caught. 3 weeks into the operation, everything was in position. I sat down with Juliet one final time to explain the endgame. She looked exhausted. The weight of 3 weeks of pretending to be broken was showing on her face. "I need you to take one final step," I said quietly. "Tomorrow we set the trap." "What do you mean?" Juliet asked, though I could see the apprehension in her eyes. "You're going to call Weston. You're going to tell him you've decided to sign the condo over, that you want to meet with a lawyer to finalize the transfer." Juliet's face went pale. "But Dad, that's my inheritance. My grandmother's home." "I know," I said gently, taking her hand. "But at this stage, Haven is so confident in her control over you that she'll lower her guard completely. When she thinks she's won, she makes mistakes. She reveals herself. And the condo, once this is over, it's yours again. The transfer will never be finalized, but Haven needs to believe it will be." She nodded slowly, understanding the necessity. I'd already contacted Malcolm. My former colleague in law enforcement had made the arrangements quietly. We had a warrant standing by. Detective Patricia O'Sullivan, who'd worked white-collar crimes for 15 years, understood the case immediately and had brought in a prosecutor. We'd identified an attorney, Victoria Morrison, who specialized in family law, and had agreed to participate in the sting without revealing her role to Haven. The courthouse in downtown Boston was selected. It was public enough to seem legitimate, secure enough for what needed to happen. Everything was ready. That evening, Juliet made the call. "Weston, I've been thinking about what your mother said," she told him, her voice carefully controlled. "I want to do the right thing for Ethan's future. I'm ready to sign." I listened through the secure line, monitoring for any sign of suspicion. There was none. Weston accepted her words at face value, probably relieved that the pressure would finally end. Within an hour, Haven was on the phone with her son, her voice sharp with barely contained triumph. "I told you she'd crack. These women always do when they understand what's at stake. Call that lawyer. Tell her we're ready to move forward tomorrow, 11 in the morning." Then Haven called Russell. The conversation lasted 7 minutes. Through the transmitter, I heard her lay out the plan with military precision. "Just in case that fool Juliet tries anything stupid tomorrow, I want muscle there. Nothing obvious. Just stand in the background. Remind her what happens when people don't cooperate." Russell agreed without hesitation. I saved the recording. That was the moment Haven revealed her full hand. Threatening presence, intimidation, coercion. It was all there, documented, impossible to deny. At midnight, I called Malcolm. "Tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock, the courthouse. All systems go." "Ready," Malcolm replied. I turned to Juliet, who was sitting in my living room, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Tomorrow morning, you walk into that lawyer's office. You bring the condo documents. Haven will come. Russell will be there. Weston might be there, too. And at the exact moment, Haven tries to pressure you into signing. The police arrive with a warrant." "What if something goes wrong?" Juliet whispered. "Nothing will go wrong," I said, and I meant it. Because I've done this before. Because we have evidence. Because Haven thinks she's already won. I checked my phone one final time. Solomon's secure network showed all systems green. Andre had documented every movement. Owen's forensic analysis was airtight. Malcolm had coordinated with the district attorney's office. Weston was ready to testify. The recordings were backed up in 3 separate locations. Everything was ready. "Tomorrow," I told my daughter, "your life changes. Tomorrow, this ends." She looked at me with eyes that held equal parts hope and terror. "I trust you, Dad," she said simply. That was all I needed to hear. The morning of the operation arrived faster than I'd expected. I parked my car across from the downtown Boston courthouse, watching the entrance. I checked my watch. 9:55. In 5 minutes, Juliet would walk into that building with the condo documents. In 10 minutes, my daughter's nightmare would end. The phone in my pocket buzzed. A text from Malcolm: "All units in position. Ready when you are." I typed back, "Go." Inside the courthouse, Juliet sat across from Victoria Morrison in a small conference room. Haven Jenkins was just arriving. Russell Crawford. Close behind her, a man with a criminal record and a mean face, the perfect enforcer. Weston was already there, hidden in an observation room, prepared to testify. Victoria, playing her role perfectly, smiled professionally at Haven. "Ms. Jenkins, before we proceed, I need to confirm something. Ms. Morrison, you're signing these documents completely of your own free will, correct? No one is pressuring you." It was the question that would either lock Haven into her lies or give her a chance to escape. Haven didn't hesitate. "Of course," Haven said smoothly. "Juliet's always been unreasonable about this property. I'm just here to make sure she understands that family comes first." "Right, Juliet." Juliet's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. Victoria noticed. I knew she noticed. She was looking for exactly this kind of evidence, the physical manifestation of coercion. Haven leaned closer to Juliet, her voice dropping. "Your little boy needs security. This is what a real mother does." That was the moment. The conference room door flew open. Detective Patricia O'Sullivan walked in, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Behind them came Malcolm. I watched from the hallway, my heart pounding with the kind of intensity I hadn't felt in years. Not the adrenaline of a military operation, but something deeper, the satisfaction of seeing justice about to be served. "Haven Jenkins." Detective O'Sullivan said, her voice steady and official. "You're under arrest for extortion, blackmail, and document forgery. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Russell moved to run. One of the officers was on him in seconds. "Russell Crawford, you're also under arrest for conspiracy to commit extortion and intimidation." Haven's face went white. For a moment, she simply stared at Detective O'Sullivan as if the words weren't registering. Then her expression shifted, shock morphing into fury, disbelief hardening into rage. "What, this is insane. I haven't done anything," she screamed, her voice climbing higher with each word. "This is a setup. Someone put you up to this?" That's when Weston stepped out from the observation room. "I did," he said quietly, looking at his mother. "I've done everything you told me to do, Mom, for years, and I'm done." He turned to Detective O'Sullivan. "I'll testify to all of it. The threats she made, the documents she forged, how she made me take Juliet's paychecks and hand them over, how she said she'd cut me loose once she got the property, all of it." Haven's expression shifted from shock to fury. "You traitor! After everything I've done for you, I'm your mother." "You're a criminal," Weston said simply, "and you deserve what's coming." As the officers led Haven out, she was still screaming, her voice echoing down the courthouse hallway. "Juliet put you up to this. She manipulated you. This is a setup." But no one was listening anymore. I watched from the hallway as they placed her in handcuffs. Justice, I thought. Not perfect, but real and necessary. I walked into the conference room where Juliet was still sitting. She looked up at me, and the moment our eyes met, something broke inside her. Tears streamed down her face, not from fear, but from relief, from liberation, from the weight of 23 days finally lifting. I pulled her into an embrace. She sobbed against my shoulder, her entire body shaking with the force of release. "It's over," I said. "You're free." Malcolm approached with one of the forensic specialists. They'd searched Russell's apartment 20 minutes earlier. "We found the marked money," Malcolm said. "All of it. Serial numbers match exactly. We've also recovered communications between Haven and Russell, outlining the intimidation strategy." "What about the documents?" I asked, keeping one hand on Juliet's shoulder as she composed herself. "Forged. Owen's report confirms it definitively. The video is a montage clip spliced from different moments, context removed. The signatures are fake. The numbers were altered using basic editing software." Malcolm smiled slightly. "This case is airtight. They won't walk." Juliet looked up at me, tears still streaming down her face. "Is it really over?" "Yes," I said. "It's really over." 6 months later, I sat in a park not far from Juliet's new apartment. She'd been promoted to head of the analytics department. The company had apologized for not catching the embezzlement scheme earlier, and offered her a significant raise as compensation. Ethan was thriving at his new school, his laughter genuine again, the sound of a child who no longer lived in fear. And I realized something profound about life, family, and second chances. Juliet had rebuilt her world piece by piece. The apartment was brighter than the old one, filled with actual furniture instead of hand-me-downs. She'd bought new clothes, not expensive ones, but nice ones, real ones. She smiled more. Her eyes had that light back. Ethan would run to me now when I visited, throwing his arms around my neck without hesitation. There was no more flinching, no more watching for threats. He was just a kid again, a kid who loved his grandfather and wasn't afraid. Weston visited every Saturday. I'll be honest, I didn't trust him at first, but he was trying. He took Ethan to the park, to the movies, bought him books about science and history. He was learning to be a father again after his mother had twisted him into something else entirely. Progress wasn't linear, but it was real. Juliet and I had returned to our old tradition, chess on Sunday evenings. We'd sit at her kitchen table, moving pieces in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only exists between people who truly know each other. One night after she'd checkmated me for the 3rd time that month, she smiled and said, "I'm getting better." "You always were," I replied. "You just forgot for a while." The court dates had come and gone. Haven Jenkins received 5 years for extortion, blackmail, and document forgery. Russell Crawford got 8 years for organizing the intimidation campaign. Weston wasn't charged. His cooperation with law enforcement had made the difference. The prosecutor called it one of the cleanest cases she'd seen in 15 years. Justice, I thought. Not perfect, but real. One evening, as we sat in her living room with Ethan already asleep upstairs, Juliet asked me something I hadn't expected. "Dad, how did you know?" she said. "How did you know I wasn't completely broken? How did you know I could survive this?" I considered the question carefully. "Because I've read people for 20 years. And what I saw in you at that train station wasn't a victim who was finished. It was a woman who was temporarily trapped. There's a difference. There is, yes, one accepts her fate. The other is waiting for a way out." I paused. "You were waiting." Juliet's eyes grew wet. "I'm glad you saw that." I'm glad you trusted me enough to tell me, I said. That took more courage than anything else. We sat in silence for a moment, and then I told her something I'd been thinking about since the moment this all began. Never give up, Juliet. No matter how bad things get. No matter how trapped you feel. There's always a way out if you don't lose hope. That's the real lesson here. Not the intelligence work. Not the planning. The real lesson is that you were never truly alone. She reached across and took my hand. Thank you, Dad, she said simply. For everything, for never giving up on me. That's what fathers do, I replied. We protect. We fight. We love. That's the job. That's all it ever is. We sat together, not speaking, just existing in the quiet aftermath of survival. And I realized something that 20 years in intelligence work had never taught me. This was the most important operation I'd ever completed. Not because of the tactics or the planning or the evidence gathered, but because I'd saved my daughter. Because my family was whole again. Because love, not technique, not strategy, not years of training, had been the real weapon all along. Looking back at everything that happened, I realized I made mistakes too. For months I stayed silent. I didn't push hard enough when Juliet made excuses. I told myself I was respecting her boundaries, but the truth is I was lazy. I didn't want to face what might be wrong. Don't be like me. If someone you love is withdrawing, if their voice changes, if they stop calling, don't ignore those signs. Push. Ask questions. Sometimes the people we care about most need us to be brave enough to demand the truth, even when they're not ready to give it. Here's what I learned from this whole operation. Weakness isn't asking for help. Silence isn't safety. And love isn't passive, it's active. It's showing up. It's fighting. When Haven thought she could destroy my family, she learned something she'll never forget. God doesn't favor the cruel. Justice finds its way. But more than that, I learned something deeper. I spent 20 years serving my country, thinking that was my purpose. But my real mission was always waiting at home. Being a father. Protecting my daughter. Teaching my grandson that real strength comes from doing the right thing, no matter the cost. I share these grandpa stories because they matter. This is one of those true story moments that reminds us we're not alone. If you've watched my grandpa stories before, you know I believe in the power of real experiences. If you have a true story like this, if you're trapped, like Juliet was, reach out. Get help. Don't suffer in silence. If this story moved you, comment below with your story. Tell me, what did you learn from my journey? Share this with someone who needs hope right now. Subscribe to our channel for more real grandpa stories and true story content about survival, justice, and family. And remember, the strongest people aren't those who never fall. They're the ones who get back up, the ones who ask for help, the ones who trust their family. That's what these true story moments teach us. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing in justice and family. It happened when I rushed to the operating room, my heart shattering at the thought of losing my only son. I had driven through the snow like a madman, praying to reach him in time. My hand reached for the cold steel door, ready to push it open, when suddenly a nurse grabbed my arm. Hide, she whispered urgently. This is a trap. Trust me. A trap? My son was dying, and she wanted me to hide. I looked into her pleading eyes, torn between fear for my boy and the desperate warning in her voice. Something in those eyes made me decide. I obeyed. 10 minutes later, what I saw through that door destroyed everything I thought I knew about my son. That 10-minute wait destroyed my life. But before I tell you what I saw through that door, tell me, where are you right now? What city? What time? Leave a comment. Let's see how far this story reaches. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was 11:45 that night. I sat alone in my living room in Rittenhouse Square, the kind of Philadelphia apartment that once echoed with laughter. Now it just echoed. The lights were off except for the pale glow from street lamps, snow falling in soft flakes outside. It should have been peaceful. It wasn't. My phone lay on the coffee table, silent and accusing. I'd called Porter 3 times. 3 times and nothing. My son was always glued to that phone, running his tech startup, or what was left of it. Ever since the company went under 6 months ago, he'd been different, distant, like a stranger wearing my boy's face. I picked up the phone again, then set it back down. Don't be that father, Emilio. Don't suffocate him. He's 35, not 15. But the unease wouldn't leave. It sat in my chest like a stone. Earlier that afternoon, we'd argued over that new life insurance policy he'd convinced me to sign 3 weeks ago. $3.5 million. It's for security, Dad, he'd said, for both of us. I'd complained about the premium. Too expensive for a retired man on a pension. Porter had snapped at me. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Then he'd left, slamming the door. That was hours ago. And now, silence. I thought about Adeline, my wife. Gone 2 years now, but some nights the absence felt fresh. She would have known what to say, how to reach Porter when he pulled away. The snow outside thickened. I glanced at the clock. Nearly 12:15 in the morning. Where was he? Then the phone rang. Not my cell. The landline. That old rotary phone nobody ever used. Its shrill ring cut through the silence like a knife, and I jumped, heart hammering. I grabbed the receiver, hands shaking. Hello? Am I speaking with Mr. Emilio Harrison? A woman's voice, flat and professional, the kind that delivered bad news for a living. Yes, this is Emilio. What's happened? Is it Porter? A pause. Too long. My stomach dropped. Mr. Harrison, I'm calling from Pennsylvania Hospital. Your son, Porter, has been involved in a serious motor vehicle accident on Interstate 76. An ambulance has transported him to our facility. His condition is critical. The room tilted. Critical. Critical? What does that mean? He's being prepped for emergency surgery as we speak. Dr. Jonathan Reed, our chief of surgery, is leading the operation. I strongly advise you to come immediately. I'm coming right now. I didn't wait for her response. I slammed the phone down, grabbed my coat, and ran. The cold air hit me like a slap when I burst outside, but I barely felt it. Snow crunched under my shoes as I stumbled to my car. Porter, my boy, my only son, critical condition. The words looped in my head as I fumbled with the keys, finally getting the car started. The engine roared to life, and I tore out of the garage, tires skidding on ice. I had to get there. I had to see my son, before it was too late. The drive to Pennsylvania Hospital usually took 20 minutes. That night, it felt like an eternity. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The windshield wipers slapped back and forth, fighting a losing battle against the snow. It was coming down heavier now, turning the world into a blur of white. Interstate 76 was nearly empty. I pressed harder on the gas. 60 miles per hour. 70. The tires hissed against the slick pavement, the back end fishtailing as I changed lanes. Slow down, Emilio. You won't help Porter if you're dead too. But I couldn't. My foot stayed pressed to the floor. Critical condition. What did that even mean? Was he conscious? In pain? Was he calling for me? My vision blurred. I was crying. I swiped at my eyes, trying to focus. The lights from oncoming traffic smeared across the windshield, like watercolors. I thought of Adeline. I could almost hear her voice. Porter is all we have, Emilio. He's our whole world. Our whole world. And I'd let him walk out, angry. Over money. A stupid insurance policy. The last thing I'd said to him was a complaint. Not, I love you. Not, be safe. Just nagging about premiums. What kind of father does that? A stoplight ahead glowed red through the snow. I didn't slow down. I blew right through it, tires skidding as I jerked the wheel to avoid a delivery truck. A horn blared behind me, but I was already gone. I didn't care. Only Porter mattered. The GPS kept recalculating. In half a mile, turn right onto Spruce Street. Half a mile. So close. Too far. When had I last really looked at my son? Not just glanced at him, but really looked? Weeks ago, he'd seemed tired, worn down. The startup failure had hit him hard, but I'd let him carry it alone, too wrapped up in my own grief over Adeline. And now he was fighting for his life, and I didn't even know if he knew I loved him. Please, I whispered. Please, God, don't take him. Not him. I'll do anything. Just don't take my boy. The snow was so thick I could barely see. But then, through the white, I saw it. Pennsylvania Hospital rose up ahead, lights blazing in every window, like salvation. I yanked the wheel, cutting into the emergency zone. A security guard shouted as I abandoned the car in the middle of the drop-off area, engine still running. I didn't care. I ran. The automatic doors slid open. The lobby was bright and sterile, smelling of antiseptic. A nurse at the information desk looked up, startled. Porter Harrison, I gasped him. My son, motor vehicle accident. Where is he? She typed quickly. 4th floor, surgical wing. Take that elevator and turn left. I was already moving. The elevator felt like forever, each floor lighting up with agonizing slowness. 2nd floor, 3rd, My heart hammered against my ribs. 4th floor. The doors slid open. I turned left down the sterile hallway, my wet shoes squeaking on the polished floor. And then I saw it. Operating room 3. The red light above the door glowed like a warning. My son was in there, fighting for his life. I reached out a trembling hand toward the steel door, ready to push through, ready to see him. I had to see him.
My hand was inches from the cold steel door when someone grabbed my arm. I spun around, startled. A young nurse stood there, her eyes wide and urgent beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Her blue scrubs were crisp, her ID badge reading Piper Carter. But what struck me wasn't her name. It was the look on her face. Pure fear. "Don't go in there," she whispered, her grip tight on my wrist. I tried to pull away. "My son is dying. I have to—" "No," she pulled me back. "You can't. Please. Let go of me," my voice echoed down the empty hallway. "I need to see him. Mr. Harrison." She said my name like she'd been waiting for me. "This is not a rescue operation, it's a trap." The word hit me like a punch. I froze. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes darted down the hallway. Then she grabbed my arm again and pulled me away from the operating room. "There's no time to explain. If they know you're here, if they see you—" "If who sees me?" "My son was in a car accident. They called me. They lied." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "Please, just trust me. Hide, now." She dragged me to a door partially hidden behind a vending machine. No label, just plain wood. She pulled it open, revealing a dark supply room, shelves with boxes, the smell of cleaning chemicals. "Get in," she hissed. "I can't just—" "Get in!" She shoved me inside. "Lock the door. Whatever you hear, don't make a sound. Don't come out until I come back. Understand? What's happening to my son?" But she was already closing the door. Her face appeared one last time in the narrowing gap. "Just hide, and don't let them know you're here." The door clicked shut. Her footsteps retreated down the hallway. Silence. I stood in the pitch-black room, my heart hammering. My hand fumbled for the lock, twisting it shut. What the hell was happening? A trap. She said it was a trap, but that didn't make sense. Porter was in an accident. The hospital called me. Dr. Reed was operating right now, unless they lied. But why? I pressed my back against the cold wall. Should I trust her? A stranger who just shoved me into a closet? But the fear in her eyes had been real. Porter. Was he really in that operating room? Was he really hurt? Or was something else happening behind that door? I crept forward in the darkness until I found the door again. There was a thin crack between the door and frame. I pressed my face close. I could see a sliver of the hallway, the bright lights. Operating room 3 across the hall, the red light still glowing. And I waited. 1 minute passed, 2, 5. Every second felt like an hour. My legs ached. My breath sounded too loud. What was I doing? My son could be dying, and I was hiding because a stranger told me to. But something in my gut told me to stay. 10 minutes, the longest 10 minutes of my life. And then I heard it, the soft hiss of hydraulic doors. The operating room was opening. I pressed my eye to the crack, hardly daring to breathe, and my heart stopped. What I saw turned my world upside down. The door to operating room 3 swung open, and Dr. Jonathan Reed stepped out. Not rushing, not frantic, not like a surgeon who'd just fought to save a life. He moved casually, peeling off his latex gloves with the calm precision of a man finishing his coffee break. He dropped them into a biohazard bin, stretching his shoulders like he'd just finished a round of golf. And then my son walked out behind him. Porter, not on a gurney, not unconscious, not bleeding or broken or fighting for his life. Walking. He stood there in blue surgical scrubs, perfectly healthy, rolling his neck from side to side like he'd been sitting too long. His face wasn't pale with pain. It was relaxed, almost bored. My brain couldn't process it, couldn't make sense of what my eyes were seeing. He's walking. He's fine. He's... A third figure emerged from the operating room. A woman. Tall, elegant, with long dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore an evening dress beneath a white doctor's coat, like she'd just come from a cocktail party. Zarya, my daughter-in-law, Porter's fiancée. She smiled, sliding her arm through Porter's. Well, she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. That was easier than I thought. Porter chuckled. Actually chuckled. The plan worked perfectly. I pressed harder against the door, my breath coming in short, silent gasps. What plan? What the hell was happening? Dr. Reed checked his watch. The fake accident report is already in the system. Officially, Porter Harrison suffered severe internal trauma on Interstate 76 at 11:45 tonight. Paramedics rushed him here. I performed emergency surgery. He smiled, cold and practiced. Everything is documented. Zarya laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. I can't wait to see his face when he gets here. Poor Emilio, rushing through the snow, terrified for his precious boy. Porter's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. The old man will be devastated. Perfect. Old man. He was talking about me, his father. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. When he arrives, Dr. Reed continued, pulling out his phone, we'll put on quite a performance. Porter will be in recovery, weak but stable. And he'll sign the consent form, Zarya added, her voice smug. Because what loving father wouldn't? Porter nodded. He trusts you, Doc. He'll sign anything you put in front of him. Dr. Reed's smile widened. And during that second surgery, there will be an unfortunate complication. A reaction to the anesthesia. Massive internal bleeding. We did everything we could. But sadly, Mr. Emilio Harrison didn't survive. The words echoed in my skull like gunshots. Didn't survive. They were talking about killing me. $3.5 million, Porter said almost dreamily. The insurance payout. Clean, tax-free. More than enough to cover my debts and then some. $3 million, I thought numbly. The tech startup. It hadn't just failed. He'd buried himself in debt. $3 million. And I was the solution. I've already booked the tickets to Zurich, Zarya said, pulling out her phone to show Porter. First class, leaving the day after the funeral. Switzerland is beautiful this time of year. Porter wrapped his arm around her waist, kissing her temple. We'll start fresh. New city, new life. No more failed companies. No more creditors. No more... He paused, his voice going flat. No more guilt trips from a lonely old man who can't let go of the past. Something inside me cracked. I'd raised him, loved him, sacrificed everything for him, put him through the best schools, supported him when the business failed, signed that damn insurance policy because he said it was for our security, and this was how he repaid me. The three of them stood there in the hallway laughing, planning my death like it was a weekend trip, like I was nothing, like my life meant nothing. My hands clenched into fists. My whole body trembled, but not from fear anymore. They wanted me dead. My own son, my only child, the boy I raised, loved, sacrificed everything for, wanted me dead. And suddenly, the fear turned into something else, something cold, something sharp, rage.
The door opened softly. It was Piper. She slipped into the supply room, closing the door behind her. In the dim light, I could see her face, pale, determined. "Did you see them?" she whispered. "Everything." My voice came out hoarse. "I saw everything. I heard everything," she nodded. "Then you know. My son wants me dead." Saying it out loud made it hurt. "For $3.5 million?" Piper's expression softened. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison, but we don't have much time. They're going to call you any minute." I pressed my palms against my eyes. "That doctor, Reed, you knew. He's a killer." She said it flatly. Dr. Jonathan Reed specializes in accidents on the operating table. Rich patients with big insurance policies, elderly patients with no family. He schedules surgery and then there's a complication. Fatal reaction to anesthesia. Unexpected bleeding. Something that can never be proven. My stomach turned. "How many?" "At least 5 that I've found." Her jaw tightened. "The payouts are generous, and Dr. Reed's research fund always receives anonymous donations afterward." "Why haven't you gone to the police?" "No proof, just suspicions." "Until tonight." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "When I saw the emergency surgery scheduled under your son's name, something felt wrong. So I checked Dr. Reed's office. I found this." She unfolded it. "Porter Harrison, medical examination. 2 days ago. Stamped in red. Optimal physical condition. He's perfectly healthy," Piper said. "There was no accident. This whole thing is a setup for you." I leaned back, my legs weak. "What do I do?" "You fight back, but you play their game first." Her voice was steel. When Dr. Reed calls, you act devastated. Relieved your son is alive. You see Porter and play the grieving, grateful father. I can't. I can't look at him. You have to. She grabbed my shoulders. If they know you heard them, they'll kill you tonight. We need time. We need evidence. What evidence? Dr. Reed's office is in the basement. The real files. Porter's health records. Insurance documents. Proof of his other victims. We get those files and the security camera footage showing Porter walking in healthy tonight. How? I'll trigger the fire alarm. While security is busy, you go to the basement. Use my access card. Get into Reed's office. Photograph everything. Then the server room next door. Copy the footage. Meet me at the basement emergency exit. It was insane. Dangerous. But what choice did I have? When Reed presents the consent form for the second surgery, Piper continued, refuse. Make an excuse. Say you need to call family. Anything. Just don't sign. My phone buzzed. Dr. Jonathan Reed. Piper and I locked eyes. This is it, she whispered. You're a terrified father who just got a miracle. Your son is alive. You're grateful. You trust Dr. Reed completely. Can you do that? Could I look into the eyes of the man planning to murder me and smile? I thought of Porter, the boy I'd raised, the man who wanted me dead. Something hardened inside me. Yes, I said, I can do that. The phone kept buzzing. They were ready for me. It was time to play my part. I answered the call, forcing my voice to break. Hello? I made it sound desperate, breathless. Mr. Harrison. Dr. Reed's voice was smooth, professional. I have news about your son. Is he... I choked on the words. Please, tell me he's alive. He is alive, but barely. The surgery was extremely difficult. We almost lost him twice. He's stable now, but very weak. You should come immediately. Where is he? Recovery room 2, 4th floor. I'll meet you there. I looked at Piper. She nodded. Go. I burst out of the supply room and ran down the hallway. A grieving father racing to see his son. That's what anyone watching would see. Recovery room 2 was at the end of the hall. I pushed through the door. The scene was perfectly staged. Porter lay in a hospital bed, face made up to look pale, almost gray. Dark circles under his eyes. An AV line ran into his hand. A heart monitor beat beside him. Everything looked real. If I hadn't seen him walking out healthy 20 minutes ago, I might have believed it. Dr. Reed stood beside the bed in his white coat. Zaria sat in a chair, her face arranged in worry. Porter! I rushed to the bedside. Oh God, my boy! I grabbed his hand. Warm, strong, not someone who'd just survived death. Porter's eyes fluttered open, weak, tired. An Oscar-worthy performance. Dad! He whispered. You came. Of course I came. I was so scared. I let my voice break. He's going to be okay, Dr. Reed said, hand on my shoulder. We stopped the internal bleeding, but there is a complication. I turned to him, keeping my face open, trusting. What complication? During surgery, we discovered a blood clot. Large, near the liver. Extremely dangerous. If it breaks loose, it could be fatal within minutes. What do we do? Emergency surgery. Tomorrow morning at 9. A delicate procedure. He pulled out a clipboard. I need your consent as next of kin. There it was. My death warrant. I stared at the form. That blank line waiting for my signature. Sign it, Dad. Porter's voice. Weak, but insistent. I trust Dr. Reed. He saved my life. Please, Zaria added. Don't hesitate. It's for Porter's safety. Dr. Reed held out a pen. I reached for it, hand trembling. Not from fear, but from the effort of not lunging at him. I looked down at my son, the man who wanted me dead. I thought of Adeline. All the years I'd loved this boy, raised him, sacrificed for him, and this was what he'd become. My voice strangled. I can't. Dr. Reed frowned. Mr. Harrison, I can't. Not right now. I stepped back. The pen falling. I feel dizzy. This is too much. I need to call someone. Porter's godfather. Family should know about this. There's no time, Dr. Reed started. I'm sorry, I backed toward the door. I can't think straight. Give me a few minutes, please. And then I ran. I didn't look back. I burst through the door and sprinted down the hallway, heart pounding. Behind me, Dr. Reed shouted, Mr. Harrison, wait! But I didn't stop. And then, piercing through the air, the fire alarm exploded throughout the building. Piper's signal. It was time. The service elevator doors closed, muffling the chaos above. The fire alarm still echoed distantly, but down here it was just a faint wail. I leaned against the cold metal wall, catching my breath as the elevator descended with a groan. The floor indicator blinked. Third floor, second, first. Basement. The doors opened with a hiss. The basement was nothing like the pristine floors above. It was a different world. Dark. Cold. The ceiling hung low, crisscrossed with exposed pipes that dripped condensation onto cracked concrete. The air smelled damp and stale, like old water and forgotten things. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting shadows that seemed to move. I stepped out, Piper's access card clutched in my hand. My shoes echoed on the wet floor. Signs pointed down narrow corridors, archives, maintenance, server room, and at the end of one hallway, barely visible in the dim light, a door with a nameplate. Dr. Jonathan Reed, Chief of Surgery, his lair. I moved quickly, trying to keep my footsteps quiet. The hallway stretched ahead, empty except for the hum of machinery somewhere in the walls. I reached the door and swiped Piper's card. The lock clicked green. The door swung open. Dr. Reed's office was shockingly luxurious compared to the dank basement outside. Thick carpet, a massive mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with medical texts. It smelled of leather and expensive coffee. The money from murder must pay well. I went straight to the desk. The drawers were locked, but the files Piper mentioned, she said he kept them close. I tried the bottom drawer, locked. The one above it, locked. Then I noticed a filing cabinet partially hidden behind a leather chair. I pulled it open. Unlocked. Inside, folders. Dozens of them. I flipped through quickly. Names I didn't recognize. Medical reports, insurance documents, and then I found it. A thin folder labeled simply, Harrison. I pulled it out with shaking hands and opened it. There. Porter's medical examination from 2 days ago. At the top of the report, in bold letters, patient status. Optimal physical condition. No injuries. No illness. Perfect health. Below it, financial documents. Bank notices. Foreclosure warnings. Porter's tech company. Total debt, $3 million. And beneath that, a copy of my life insurance policy. Beneficiary, Porter Harrison. Payout amount, $3.5 million. I pulled out my phone and started photographing everything. My hands trembled so badly, the first few shots were blurred. I steadied myself and tried again. Click, click, click. Every page, every document. Then I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside, distant but approaching. I shoved the folder back into the cabinet and closed it as quietly as I could. The footsteps grew closer. I slipped out of the office, closing the door behind me with barely a sound. The server room. Next door. I had to move fast. I swiped the card. The heavy metal door unlocked with a click. I slipped inside. The room was freezing, filled with rows of humming server racks, their lights blinking green and yellow. I found the security console along the wall. Multiple screens showed camera feeds from all over the hospital. Emergency room, lobby, 4th floor, and there, underground staff parking. I plugged in Piper's USB drive. The screen flickered. Copying footage from parking garage. Camera 4, 11:45 tonight. A progress bar appeared. 10%, 20. The footsteps outside were louder now, right outside the server room. 30%, 40, come on, 50%, 60. The footsteps stopped. Right outside the door, 70%, 80. I held my breath, 90%, 95. The door handle turned. 98, 99, copy, complete. I yanked the USB drive out just as the door swung open. In the doorway stood Dr. Reed, eyes burning with rage. Behind him, Zaria smiled triumphantly. "Looking for something, Emilio?" she sneered. "It was a good game, Emilio." Dr. Reed stepped inside, Zaria behind him. The door clicked shut. "Did you really think we were that stupid?" Reed's voice was calm. "That we wouldn't prepare for this?" My hand tightened around the USB drive. "I have proof. Porter's records. Everything." Zaria laughed and snatched my phone before I could react. She deleted the photos one by one. Click, click, click. Gone. "Those files?" Reed smiled coldly. "Planted bait? Fake documents. The real records are destroyed. The security footage? A loop from last night. Completely useless." He gestured at the USB. "We prepared for everything, Mr. Harrison." The walls closed in. I had nothing. Zaria pulled out a large syringe. "Now you'll sign. The easy way or the hard way." Reed held up the clipboard. That same form. That blank line. I backed against the servers. This was it. Unless... Wait. I pulled out my old phone. Money laundering. Porter arranging $2 million in illegal bribes. I recorded it 3 months ago. And this phone has been recording everything in this room. Your confession. Your threats. Reed's smile faltered. It's connected to the cloud, I lied. If I don't enter a password in 5 minutes, this recording sends to my lawyer, to newspapers, to police, to everyone. Complete bluff. But I sold it. He's lying, Zaria said uncertainly. Am I? I met Reed's eyes. Willing to bet your freedom on it? Reed hesitated. Stop him, he snapped. Inject him before... The door burst open. What the hell is going on? Porter stood there, face flushed with anger. He took in the scene. Me. Zaria with a syringe. The phone in my hand. His eyes met mine. He understood. So you knew. Porter said, voice ice cold. Everything. Father and son stared at each other. The boy I'd raised. The man who wanted me dead. Stop! Piper burst through the door, Officer Sullivan behind her. We disabled your fake loop, Piper said. The real cameras recorded everything, every word, every threat. She pointed to the ceiling corner. A camera, red light blinking. Reed, Zaria, and Porter turned to look, horror on their faces. No, Reed whispered. You're done, Sullivan said. Reed panicked and lunged at Piper, but Piper pulled a syringe and drove it into his thigh. Sedative, maximum dose. You know how this works, Doctor. Reed's legs buckled. He collapsed, unconscious. Zaria screamed and tried to run. Sullivan grabbed her and cuffed her wrists. That left Porter. He stared at the fallen doctor, at Zaria in handcuffs, at me. This is your fault, he screamed. You ruined everything, he charged at me. Sullivan intercepted, grabbing him from behind. Sir, don't! Porter thrashed violently. He twisted hard. Sullivan's grip broke. Porter stumbled backward, off balance. His foot caught on Reed's unconscious body. He fell, backward, toward the server racks. His head snapped back, connected with the sharp metal edge. The sound was terrible, a dry crack. Porter slumped against the rack, then slid down. His head hung at an unnatural angle. Eyes open, staring at me, the rage gone. Only shock remained. Terror. His voice was hoarse. I can't move. My legs, my arms, I can't feel anything. Silence. Karma had arrived. Not in a courtroom, but right here, in the cold server room, in the middle of his own evil plan. The man who faked paralysis was now truly paralyzed. 1 month later, I came back. The news had exploded. The Red operating room scandal. Dr. Jonathan Reed, Zaria, and Porter's faces were everywhere. Justice moved swiftly. Reed got life in prison. Conspiracy to murder, medical negligence, fraud. Piper's testimony revealed years of suspicious deaths under his care, stripped of his license, destined to die in disgrace. Zaria received 20 years for conspiracy to murder. Her courtroom terrors didn't help. Porter couldn't stand trial. The C4 vertebra fracture left him quadriplegic from the neck down. He could barely breathe on his own. No movement below the neck. Forever. The state moved him to a long-term care facility for inmates with medical needs. Piper became chief supervisor of ethics at Pennsylvania Hospital, a hero who'd make sure no one like Reed could operate again. I canceled the insurance policy immediately. The $3.5 million Porter wanted so desperately, it never existed for him. I was free, but I needed to close this chapter. That's why 1 month later, I returned. The facility was small and sterile, smelling of antiseptic and despair. His room was at the end of a dim hallway, number 12. A nurse was adjusting his IV when I entered. You're Mr. Harrison? She asked. Yes. 5 minutes. I didn't need more. She left, closing the door softly, and there he was, Porter, my son. He lay in a specialized bed, head immobilized by supports. His body was thin, wasting an IV, a catheter bag, monitors beeping. He couldn't move anything, not his arms, not his legs, not his fingers, but his eyes moved, and when they locked onto me, they burned with pure, impotent hatred. He tried to speak, a gurgling sound. His mouth opened, but no words came, just rage. I walked to his bedside and looked down at the man I'd once loved more than anything, the boy I'd raised, the son I'd trusted. I came to tell you one thing, I said softly, calmly. Porter's eyes narrowed, his breathing quickened. You wanted to put me on an operating table, I continued. You wanted me helpless, dependent on machines, so you could start a new life with blood money. A wheezing sound escaped his throat. "Now," I said, leaning closer, "you're the one trapped. You're the one who depends on others for everything. Forever." I straightened up. "Enjoy the rest of your life, Porter." I didn't wait for a response. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out. Down the hallway, past the nurse's station, past security. I pushed through the glass doors and stepped outside. The sun was shining, bright and warm. The air was crisp and fresh. Winter was ending. Spring was coming. I took a deep breath, feeling the sunlight on my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Greed can turn a son into a stranger. Betrayal can live in your own bloodline. But justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from karma. I lost my son that night, but I regained something far more valuable. My life, my dignity, and the knowledge that no amount of money is worth your soul. I walked toward my car, toward the rest of my new life. The nightmare was over. Looking back at everything that happened, I realized how blind I was. I trusted too easily. I ignored the warning signs. Porter's sudden interest in that insurance policy, his cold distance after the bankruptcy, the way he looked at me, not as his father, but as an obstacle. This is my true story, a true story I never wanted to live. If you're watching this, learn from my mistakes. Don't ignore the red flags, even when they come from people you love. Greed changes people. It turns sons into strangers. It turns families into battlefields. Protect yourself. Question things that don't make sense. Trust your instincts. I'm sharing this true story not for sympathy, but as a warning. These grandpa stories aren't just entertainment. They're lessons written in pain. Grandpa stories like mine are meant to teach you what textbooks never will. And if my pain can save even one person from betrayal, then it was worth telling. I thank God I'm still here to tell it. There were moments in that hospital basement when I thought it was over, but God had other plans. He sent Nurse Piper. He gave me the strength to fight back. And in the end, justice prevailed. Not the way I expected, but in a way that felt almost divine. Porter wanted me dead on an operating table. Now he's the one trapped in a bed, dependent on others, staring at the ceiling for the rest of his life. That's not revenge. That's karma. That's God's justice. So here's my advice. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you're standing at the edge of your own grave to realize who truly loves you. Pay attention, protect yourself, and never, ever let greed into your family. These grandpa stories are real. This happened to me, and I hope it never happens to you. If this true story moved you, or if you've experienced betrayal from family, please leave a comment below. Share your story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more life lessons like this. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a story can save a life. Thank you for listening, and may God protect you all.